Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, and I do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation. We've been covering the much anticipated launch of SaucerSwap since the beginning of the year, and the launch did not disappoint. Today, we welcome back Peter from SaucerSwap to discuss their platform and the launch. Welcome back, Peter.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Brandon. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I'm an avid user of SaucerSwap, so I'm as interested as anybody. It's great to have you back. So to get right into it, we'll start off with the basics. SaucerSwap is a decentralized exchange. What is a decentralized exchange and why are they necessary?
Totally. So decentralized exchanges or DEXs use smart contract-based automated market maker or AMM protocols to facilitate the trading of crypto assets. Okay, so you can think of an AMM protocol as like a robot waiter that's serving up trades between you and a liquidity pool. So within this model, users can come along and play a few different roles. The most common is just being a trader. So say someone holds HBARX from Stater's liquid staking protocol, and they want to trade that for HBAR. So decentralized exchange allows that through a smart contract-based automated market maker. Okay, you can have another user who has two tokens and they want to earn an APY on providing those tokens as liquidity. So they can come along and say have $50 of HBAR and $50 of HBARX, and they can provide those tokens to a liquidity pool. So that's another type of user, and then also a protocol governor. That ties into the decentralized component of DEXs. So to touch on the liquidity provider role, someone can provide two crypto assets to an AMM, and this helps with the decentralization of trading, which is one of the key value propositions of a DEX. So instead of having market makers come and create and maintain order books, you have a smart contract that uses a simple equation to price crypto assets in a liquidity pool. And the liquidity comes from any user who wants to come along and provide liquidity to pools. So the whole reason that they do this is that swaps in a pool incurs a fee, and a portion of that fee is redistributed to liquidity providers as payment for their work. So every time a swap occurs in a pool that a liquidity provider has provided liquidity to, they're getting a portion of that fee. Additionally, when a liquidity provider provides liquidity into a pool, they receive a special kind of token, which is called an LP token, a liquidity provider token. So going back to that example, let's just say that user who provided liquidity of HBAR and HBARX, they would receive a HBAR, HBARX LP token. And that represents their ownership of the liquidity pool. It's basically a receipt that they can redeem to get those underlying assets back at any time, but it represents their ownership of that pool. And a liquidity provider who holds those tokens that can then do what's called farming. So farming is basically staking those LP tokens into another smart contract. And the whole idea here is that it improves capital efficiency of assets by utilizing idle LP pairs, and it generates yield while also bootstrapping the protocol's liquidity. So farms can kind of direct the flow of liquidity between pools and achieve maximal capital efficiency. It is also just a further incentive to grow liquidity, which is the backbone of any exchange. That's kind of like the key components of decentralized exchanges. I will say that in recently, there's some features that have come to be expected from decentralized exchanges, which is decentralized governance, and some other stuff like single-sided staking. So those features that I talked about before are more foundational, but there's some other features that are now just kind of expected from decentralized exchanges. And why are they necessary? I would say that DEXs unlock liquid markets to Web3 developers seeking to list their project's token. They no longer have to seek a listing on centralized exchanges. It enables projects to gain access to funding, which accelerates development, which is what we love to see. And it allows users who don't want a custodial kind of system of a centralized exchange to trade tokens in a trustless and permissionless environment while retaining custody of their assets.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. One of the things that I've been really impressed with is actually seeing in practice how those really low fees because of Hedera's efficiency makes a DEX built on Hedera that much better than most of the stuff that's out there. I mean, because of the more expensive networks that are out there, it makes using those networks cumbersome and expensive, where something like this, a lot more of the rewards can go to building out your network and, of course, going to the liquidity providers as well. So I've loved that. And then, as you mentioned, it's great to see the ability to list tokens that might have a difficult time getting listed on a centralized exchange. We know from what HBAR went through trying to get listed on various exchanges. Heck, there's a lot of exchanges that still don't list HBAR. So we've seen how difficult that can be, even for a huge project like Hedera. So, smaller projects, this gives them an avenue to be able to list their tokens. So it's fantastic. I've really been impressed so far.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's exactly right. Yep.
All right. So what are your thoughts on the initial launch?
We're really happy. We feel that the launch was fantastic. If we had to give it a rating out of 10, I would say it was a solid 9. For the most part, everything worked very smoothly. We did have to beef up our server and database right at launch, which was just a result of the sheer traffic. And I mean, this is a pretty bullish problem to have, but it did slow things down for the first couple hours after launch. We have since beefed up our server and database. So, we've also done some work to just further optimize our backend to handle higher amounts of traffic. We did have one bug with how data was being displayed for some users in the farm. And we resolved this pretty quickly in about a day. And since we patched that, we haven't had any issues or have reported that issue anymore. So, which is fantastic to see. Earlier today, there was a small bug with APRs displaying incorrectly, and we patched that quickly as well. We're chalking this up to some growing pains, but overall, things have gone really smoothly. We've heard great feedback from people who have used our DEX. That's awesome to see, especially some users from other networks who are just amazed at how cheap it is to interact with our protocol. And then additionally, we in the last couple of days, we created a ticketing system in our Discord, which has sped up the efficiency with which we can process questions or issues that users are experiencing. Our team before was already incredible at responding to these issues, but our ticketing system has made it even faster. Our average time from a ticket opening to closing is about 20 minutes. So we're confident that we will be able to provide, second to none customer service through some pretty robust scaling. So overall, we're really happy with how the launch has gone so far.
Yeah, so from what I've seen, like you mentioned, there's been some small user interface issues, but as far as, the swaps working and providing liquidity using the smart contracts, utilizing the farming, there really hasn't been any issues with the actual use of the platform. So again, impressed. So the next thing I wanted to touch on, you went through and kind of described the ways you can earn yield, and those two ways are providing liquidity and yield farming. Can you explain where these yields come from and how all that works?
Absolutely, yeah. So the first way in which a user can earn yield is by providing equal value parts of any two assets in the automated market maker in exchange for LP tokens. So we talked about HBAR and HBARX before. There could be, you could kind of make any liquidity pair of HTS tokens on our deck. So it could be Galaxy and let's just say Hedera native USDC. If you wanted to provide liquidity to this pool, you can do that and you receive these LP tokens. So these LP tokens earn interest on swap fees every time the assets they have deposited are traded. So with that example of Galaxy and USDC, every time a user is swapping between Galaxy and USDC, those swap fees basically go to liquidity providers through those LP tokens, right? So the way to think of it is just swap fees are kind of aggregated and redistributed to liquidity providers on a pro rata basis based on the amount of LP tokens they hold. It's kind of a fancy way of saying, how much of the liquidity in the pool does that liquidity provider own? And if they own a lot, they get more of the swap fees. If they own a little bit, they get less. So that's where that source of yield comes from. And then another source of yield is yield farming. So SaucerSwap's protocol token, SAUS, has a circulating supply of roughly 200 million. I think it's about 208 million now, and a max supply of 1 billion, meaning that roughly 800 million has yet to be brought into circulation. And this is brought into circulation by what's called emissions. So when a user has those LP tokens, they're already receiving swap fees just by holding them. But they can go a step further and stake those LP tokens into yield farms. And by doing so, they receive the sauce that's brought into circulation through emissions with rewards based on the weight of the emissions sent to a farm and the quantity of LP tokens staked. Okay, so basically some farms are incentivized more than others. And that's reflected in how much sauce is being emitted to each farm. So that's another source of yield. And right now, we're not only emitting sauce, but we're also emitting HBAR. So we have a dual reward structure, which is very exciting. So yeah, it's basically those two sources of yield are the main incentives for liquidity providers.
Okay, I got you. Now you said you're also giving HBAR as emissions. Now that's coming from the HBAR Foundation, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so how much is that, and how long is it going to last, and where are the rewards going to come from after the HBAR has run out?
So we received a grant from the HBAR Foundation, which dispenses 20 million HBAR to our farms over the course of 6 months. So to break that down a little bit further, we have 10 million HBAR that are being emitted to farms in the first 2 months. So the incentive is quite high for early liquidity providers. And then 6 million HBAR will be dispensed in the second phase, which is months 3 and 4. Should our TVL exceed 5 million, which right now it's looking pretty good. I think our TVL is something like 12.5 million. So we've hit that milestone. And then we have 4 million HBAR to be emitted in the last phase, which is months 5 and 6. And that is based on the milestone of our TVL is over 15 million, which we expect to see. So the idea here is basically to bootstrap liquidity and also to incentivize those cross-chain users to come along and stake some liquidity to earn yield. The APRs from our farms are very attractive right now. If you're listening and you're on Ethereum, you hold some USDT or USDC or DAI on Ethereum, you want to come over to Hedera and earn some rewards. I think the APRs are about like 100% for the stablecoin pairs, which is very good. So you can port those assets via Hashport, which is an enterprise grade bridge that provides a pipeline between Ethereum and Hedera. And again, tying back to that liquidity providing and yield farm, you can provide assets, let's just say USDC from Ethereum and DAI to stablecoins, and stake those LP tokens that you get from providing liquidity into a corresponding farm. again, there's quite an incentive to do so right now, especially with the HBAR rewards from the HBAR Foundation grant. And so, touching on the second part of the question, as for where farming rewards will come from when the HBAR Foundation is finished, or the grant has been dispensed, this will be in the form of sauce, which again is our protocol's native token. So users who then get this sauce will be able to perform several functions with it. There's a few utilities that I can touch on. But I do want to take this opportunity to also mention this concept in DeFi right now, which is known as real yield. And the whole idea is that inflationary models that work through emissions are all well and good until they run out. So after which point, a protocol basically has to make a decision about how to sustain farm-based APRs to incentivize liquidity. And the concept of real yield is to dispense protocol revenue to yield farmers, such that the rewards that they earn are coming from real utility. So this is exactly the kind of model we want to implement. For now, we have an emission schedule, which is great, and it works. And our token has several utilities. So when users are receiving that sauce in farms, they can perform utilities with that sauce. But in the future, we intend to innovate with real yield in mind. And I think that the possibilities that are afforded to us by building on Hedera are going to be extremely competitive in the Web3 environment.
Oh, that's exciting. So the one thing I wanted to ask about was your swaps. Where do you think most of your trading volume is coming from? Do you think it's people, performing arbitrage? Do you think it's people that are just trading? Do you think people are just buying tokens to hodl? Where's most of your volume coming from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now, there aren't any trading bots on Hedera that we're aware of. So if you look at something like the Uniswap protocol, most of the trading volume is done via arbitrage bots that are interacting directly with the smart contracts, not actually users who are using the front end to interact with the smart contracts. So it's not bots. I think that especially after launch, there were a lot of arbitrage opportunities. At some point, USDC went up to I think $1.80, and which is just, it presents a very profitable arbitrage opportunity for arbitrageurs who step in and take advantage of that. Since then, as expected, USDC has rebalanced. It's sitting right at $1. Pretty much. So that was definitely a source of a lot of swapping. And then I think another source was users who came along and maybe only had HBAR or HBARX or one other HTS token, and they wanted to become a liquidity provider. So they swapped some of their HBAR or HBARX or other HTS token to get another HTS token. So they had two. And then they provided those tokens as liquidity as a means to an end of yield farming. So I think that's probably another major source of the swap volume that we've seen so far.
Yeah, you pretty much described me. I did both. I did a little bit of arbitrage with HBAR and HBARX, and I did a little bit of swaps from HBAR and USDC to be able to provide a liquidity pair. So I think you're pretty much hitting the mark there. So one of the next things I wanted to touch on is, and you already said that you had some information on it, some of the utilities for Sauce. Can you run us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sauce is the protocol's native token. There are a few confirmed but not yet implemented utilities of Sauce, and there are others that are implemented. So two of the major kind of foundational utilities are liquidity and governance. So besides HBAR, Sauce holds the greatest amount of liquidity on our protocol, which is exactly as we expected. Because Sauce is a common base in LP pairs, it kind of bridges otherwise fragmented liquidity, and that's made possible through our protocol's multi-hop feature. So that's one of the utilities, is serving as basically a liquidity token. And for governance, when we begin to roll out our DAO in a manner that reflects Hedera's path to decentralization, which starts small and expands the purview over time, Sauce will carry voting power to influence the direction of the protocol's development. Additionally, Sauce emissions to farms serves to bootstrap liquidity on the protocol through liquidity mining incentives, which I talked about before, also known as yield farming incentives. Additionally, we will be rolling out single-sided staking as one of the next features. So within single-sided staking, a user can take Sauce and stake their Sauce to receive Saucer, which is basically a receipt token. It's very similar in concept to a liquidity provider coming along with two assets, providing liquidity and receiving a receipt token, those LP tokens, but instead it's single-sided. So they take Sauce and they stake it, they receive Saucer. And the reason they do this is because they receive an APY by holding that Saucer via automated Sauce buybacks on the protocol. So this all comes without any risk of impermanent loss. Single-sided staking is a very popular feature on DEXs. And what's more is we actually have some really exciting ideas for the utility for the Sauce token that I don't think has been done before on any protocol. And this is still in the concepting phase. And at this point, I think it would be considered a trade secret. So I will just leave that up to the imagination for now. But when we have more information to share, I think it's going to turn some heads. So those are some of the utilities.
All right, looking forward to it. So this single-sided staking, is that going to be available for other assets like HBAR?
For right now, it's just going to tie into Sauce. Okay. So Stater basically has a single-sided staking model for HBAR. It's that liquid staking, and they're doing it perfectly. So yeah, we're kind of staying in our lane for now and just sticking to Sauce single-sided staking.
Sure, makes sense. So are you going to have any provisions for lending on SaucerSwap?
Yeah, so lending is not something that's on our immediate roadmap. Some features take precedence, such as front-end bridge integration to lower the bar for cross-chain users to come over to SaucerSwap, single-sided staking, rolling out the first phases of our DAO, increasing the number of distinct and discrete utilities of the Sauce token. These are the kind of things that we're working on now, and they for the most part have us really preoccupied. That being said, lending protocol is a key piece of infrastructure for DeFi ecosystem. And this sort of functionality could actually tie into that concept of real yield that I talked about before. That being, lending and borrowing can incur fees, and those fees can generate revenue for the protocol that are then distributed to liquidity providers. So the short answer is it's not on our immediate roadmap, but it's definitely something that we could look into if another protocol doesn't come along and offer it.
Yeah, fair enough. So what are some of the tokens and features you're going to be adding in the short to medium term?
Yeah, so for tokens, you're going to see a lot more bridged assets on SaucerSwap. You're going to see wrapped ETH, wrapped Bitcoin, Link, and some more tokens that are supported by Hashport as they're added. So the reason is that capturing cross-chain liquidity is so important. So we want to incentivize cross-chain pairs as much as we reasonably can. I do want to point out, just as we're talking about Hashport and cross-chain assets, as it's been asked a few times, all of those ported tokens from Ethereum become HTS tokens when they arrive on Hedera. So on our protocol, if you see brackets HTS after a token, that means it's a ported token that came through Hashport. So if you see USDC brackets HTS, that's Ethereum USDC that came through a hash port. So in the realm of native HTS tokens, for example, Galaxy, HBAR X, HST, that kind of family of assets, we expect to see a lot more tokens popping up on Hedera now that there is a DEX. Now, we have a partnership with Headstarter, which is the premier launchpad on Hedera. And we're going to be working closely with Headstarter to support projects that IDO or INO via their accelerator. So a lot of the HTS tokens that we add going forward are going to be projects that are vetted by Headstarter, accelerated by Headstarter, and then supported by SaucerSwap. And then as for features, the next few items that we're going to implement are one of the first things that users are going to see. I'm hoping that it's going to happen beginning of next week, is beefing up our analytics. So some charting functionalities. There was actually one user in a Discord, and just a shout out to Iron in our Discord, who just made this like brilliant workaround in Google Docs actually to have some charting, which is really cool to see. But yeah, so beefing up our analytics, doing front-end bridge integration, single-sided staking, and community pools. A number of other integrations and expansions outside of our protocol, for example, centralized exchange listings, data aggregator listings, for instance, CoinGecko, DeFi Llama, which we're currently working on. I would just have to expose some API endpoints for them. And then supporting some in-wallet swaps, which is going to make it very convenient for users to just swap tokens right in their wallet. And some other items, but those I think those are the big ones.
Well, it seems like you're going to be busy enough. So you're in talks with DeFi Llama to try to get the total value lock to actually be represented?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We just have to expose some API endpoints, but that should be done either today or tomorrow, and then we'll get listed soon after.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. So what are your long-term goals for SaucerSwap?
Yeah, so SaucerSwap will ultimately be a one-stop shop for Hedera DeFi. That's kind of how we've been describing it. We want to allow users to do anything from bridging assets easily through front-end bridge integration, to go as far as possibly the lending and borrowing that you mentioned before against deposited collateral, or even leveraged trading. That's something else that we could definitely explore. Just coming back to that concept of real yield, DYDX is a perpetuals contract protocol on Ethereum, and the revenue that they generate is insane. They generate a lot of revenue, and I think in Q4 they are going to distribute some of that revenue to liquidity providers. So this is kind of like that trend in DeFi of creating sustainable models through revenue. So that's something that we could explore. But so I think it's just going to come in the form of just trying to be all-encompassing with a DeFi web app. Funds are easy to manage, experience is seamless. We want to create a seamless UI UX. In our view, a product that manages to solve the UI UX problem and the education problem together will be a clear winner in the future. I mean, in an industry that could very well be the future of finance, a product that will be used by the masses is, frankly, obviously the one that will win. In terms of our tokenomics, we want to shift away from an inflationary model and instead focus on diversifying our revenue streams and capturing real yield, as this will be sustainable in the long term, and also enhancing liquidity provider incentives. Ultimately for SaucerSwap, we're going to be upgrading to a V2 protocol, either by adopting a novel technology such as a proactive market maker, or by iterating upon our constant product automated market maker. So in terms of the latter, we would likely implement our version of Uni V3's concentrated liquidity. Basically, the idea here is that liquidity providers can concentrate capital in a price range that they believe will generate the highest return.
Okay.
And this basically makes swapping less frictionless. It increases LP rewards APR. Without having too much of a long drawn out answer, I do want to mention that, modeling those additional use cases for the sauce token, ones that will add new sources of revenue to the protocol, boost generated yield to liquidity providers, provide more utility. That's definitely something that's a big goal for us as well. First and foremost, we are a DEX, so we're going to prioritize development of our DEX, and then all of the integrations and feature implementations will just improve the trading experience. And we ultimately just strive to be the most liquid market in Hedera's growing token economy.
All right. Well, I will tell you right off the bat that in under a week, you've already gained a loyal customer. I've been impressed from day one. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to pass on to the community before we let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, I just want to say, thank you to everyone who has supported us. The Hedera community is just awesome. It's really exciting that DeFi has dawned on Hedera. Just yesterday, we announced that SaucerSwap has now become the de facto price oracle for HTS tokens. You can now see the value of your tokens and hashback through our API. This means that there's effectively a token economy now, which is just, it's awesome to see. We're extremely proud to be building on Hedera and helping along with some other great projects like Hashpack, like Hashport, like all of our liquidity partners to lead the charge forward for Hedera DeFi. I think there's a lot to be excited about, and you can rest assured that we're going to be working around the clock to continually innovate and bring more value to the ecosystem. So once again, just thanks to everyone, and we're looking forward to what's to come.
Well, Peter, I wish you and your team the best. Thanks for coming, and good luck.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.